Hejsan allihopa och varmt välkomna till ett nytt avsnitt av Nyfiken. Jag är såklart Malte Andersson och jag sitter här med Adrian. Och det här avsnittet kommer vara lite annorlunda för det kommer vara på engelska. För Adrian, du är från Norge och vi tänkte att det skulle bli lite enklare för dig och mig om vi kör på engelska. Speciellt för mig. Jag är ju rätt så limiterad i mitt förstående utav våra grannländers språk. Så med det, Adrian Søby Skogen, warmly welcome to a Nyfiken podcast.
Thank you, and it's I would say it's a quite a cute, humorous thing that we do indeed do this podcast in English, although we're söta bror and everything. But yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you
very much. I'm really glad you're. Before we have prepped for this podcast, we have spoken for it. And I'm really glad that you're from Norway, because if you were Danish or something, it would be, I know, that would be off the rails. I wouldn't understand anything.
Yeah, but still, we would still do it in English, so it wouldn't matter with it.
Yeah, that's true. So Adrian Søby Skogen, today we're going to talk about entrepreneurship. You have been an entrepreneur for almost all of your adult life, even going over that. You left school at an early age and had a great fortune of working at prestigious places, one of them being at Gartner in London. Later, you became a co-founder at DocuMaster, which you became a partner and eventually exited when the company was acquired. And after that, you founded a marketing firm, Compatch, which became a success. The pandemic, and we will go to more in detail what happened there. So you went bankrupt, and now you have become an investor in Aka and so many other companies we will talk about. So my first question is, what makes someone an entrepreneur?
What a question, Malta. I mean, I like the fact that you're asking, like, what makes someone become a founder or an entrepreneur? Because it doesn't mean that you are quote unquote successful. But in my opinion, you do need to be someone who sees some really, really tough challenges and get triggered by solving those challenges, solving problems. I know it's a kind of like a cliche thing to say, but you really need to be somewhat of a contrarian in the type of mindset you have. Because if you're not a contrarian, by definition, you're just doing what everybody else is doing, right? So I think that's the main part of having like a contrarian mindset, always wanting to be challenging something, never being satisfied with the status quo, which is also a cliche thing. And sometimes, like the type of people I've been around, which are founders, some more successful than others, they also are, I would say, like painfully annoying in a sense where not only are they looking to solve problems, but also constantly looking for problems. And sometimes you can get caught up in just finding problems just for the hell of it, right? So, but I would say definitely being a contrarian is a very good start of being the key denominator of whether or not you want to go into entrepreneurship or not, if that makes sense.
Do you think you're annoying?
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. I think I'm annoying. I think, yeah. That's a fun question. Sometimes, I would say I'm painfully annoying as well. But I think I'm very fun to work with. It's high energy. There's chaos, obviously, and for most part there's some system to the madness. But yeah, I'm annoying.
What attracted you to entrepreneurship?
I think that started back in like from my childhood. I think it's not going to be one of those podcasts, but like I had a kind of a troublesome childhood. My mom was an alcoholic, and she died when I was at a very young age, and that made me realize I had to figure out a bunch of stuff myself because I didn't have that support anymore. And And when I realized after high school that the way I was thinking and the way I was solving problems could also be somewhat commercially like viable as a way of living life, as a to getting into business, and making my living that way. I think that was one of the key moments where, yeah, from around 18, 19 years old, I realized, hey, I want to go into entrepreneurship. I want to build something, and I've always had this urge to like, yeah, take something from 0 to 100 in the shortest amount of time. And I think that stems from, yeah, from my childhood in a sense, and obviously a bunch of other things. But I think it comes from there.
When you look back at your childhood, do you see a future entrepreneur?
I'm not so sure I would say so, that if I were to look back on myself, like, hey, this is going to be an entrepreneur. But I do think I remember when I was young, my older sister, she asked me, so Adrian, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I always said, hey, I want to be on TV. So for me, it was always interesting to find a way to express myself, to find a way to. I've always had this imposter syndrome type of thing. Like, I'm always anxious. Am I doing a good enough job? I'm always paranoid in a good sense, where I think I can do better. So I think, yeah, back in those days, I think people would have said, yeah, he's probably going on TV, because that was the type of guy I was back then.
Now, as I understand, your time at school was hard.
Yeah, the time at school was hard because I was living with my alcoholic mother, and then I had to grow up fast. I moved out when I was 17 years old, and it was really rough because I had to pay rent, and then in order to pay rent, I had to work, but at the same time, I couldn't drop out of school completely, so I had to like juggle a couple of things at once, and that was pretty tough when you were, yeah, I think I was 16, 17 years old. And then I think it was after 13 Mondays in a row where I didn't show up for school. And my primary teacher, he came to me and said, hey, Adrian, I can tell that you're not really functioning well in this class. And quite frankly, you're never in the class. And he suggested to me that I should drop out of school, and he saw potential, that I should be in sales, that I should be in yeah, somewhere or another in a business setting and not staying in school. So he actually recommended to me that, hey, drop out of school. I will help you find a job, and he did. And to this day, every Christmas we have what do you call it in Sweden? Like julebord every year.
That toughness and his advice there and his help to get the work, and you start working in sales. Why do you think you are great at selling?
Many things comes from experience and childhood, but I think my brain has been like constantly trained, and I've been very eager to learn as well, eager to like understand things around me. So I've been extremely well rehearsed and trained in understanding situations, the social cues. I've been very well trained to understand when I should speak, when I should not speak, how people react to certain stuff. Like there's a lot of like basic psychology stuff that even though I cannot write a white paper on psychology, I'm pretty sure I understand it without having a PhD in psychology. And I think some of the stuff there where you get super excited about understanding people, that is also what makes you understand how to sell. Because if you are not a good salesperson, the number one reason, in my opinion, is because you are unable to connect with the other person, and you're also, secondly, unable to understand the world of that other person. So you're not able to see the world and dig deep into the feelings and the situation of the other person. So it has to be a lot about empathy as well. Now, obviously, the absolute best salespersons out there, they have that, and they also have like an insane amount of practice of tactics and rhythm and pace and what to say and how to phrase things and whatnot. But at the core end, all great salespeople understand people more than understanding what they're selling. I think if you just look at your own life, and maybe also for the listener, like sales is not that you're in a car dealership, or that you're in a clothing shop, or that you're sitting in a huge office at a tech company trying to sell the software. Sales is also by you calling your friend and getting that friend to jump out of the couch to come and help you with something. It's all of those small little details where you want something, but you would also need to present it in a way, or you would need to deliver value first, and you need to people to actually trust you and like you. So yeah, I think you experience sales in every single situation of your life.
So are you saying to become a good entrepreneur, maybe a great entrepreneur, you have to be good at sales?
If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you need to find mainly two things. Obviously, given that the product or service is good, but you need to find two things. That is great people to work for you or work with you, and you need to find customers. And obviously, if you're going to be a great entrepreneur, you check on those two boxes. So I think that kind of answers the questions. Like if you're not good at sales, most likely you will probably not be a great entrepreneur as well. And by entrepreneur, I'm saying that one of the first people in the organization, because when you're starting a company, everything is about getting it out there, finding people, building something that people en masse can use, finding customers, finding partners, finding new candidates to fill whatever position. So yeah, definitely.
And then you have the opportunity to work at Gartner in London. How did that opportunity come to you?
I was 22 years old. I think I have, if it is a record or not, but to me that was a big thing. That I think I'm the youngest in history in Gartner for a business development role. But back then, I was one of the first early adopters of LinkedIn. So we're talking like 15 years ago, 14 years ago, and one of the recruiters that were working in Gartner obviously then saw my profile, saw that the profile was filled with lots of great information, and that was how I was found. And I also had a very good results from my prior experience. So they invited me. I remember they invited me to come to London for a test interview, and then for another time for a panel interview. It was yeah, that was crazy for me, being 22 years old. And back then they didn't hire. I think they're a bit more strict now, but back then they didn't hire for like education and whatnot. But I don't think I would ever get the opportunity again if I went back and was 22 years old, because I dropped out of high school. But they saw I had like a grit, I had the executive presence, I had the drive, and I had the sales technical skills to drive a conversation with potentially these executives that Gartner on a daily basis talk to.
What did your time at Gartner teach you about how a company works?
You have to think like Gartner, and they still are. They are a machine when it comes to sales. Yes, Gartner is a top tier firm like McKinsey, Boston Consulting, and whatnot, but they are extremely well designed sales organization. And so when I came there, everything was around sales, how to generate massive volume of opportunities, how to close them, how to drive the sales process. And also back then, like we're talking 14 years ago, we were doing sales digitally. We were using, I think what was it called? Like Microsoft Link, or it was like some program that we don't use today. It was definitely not Teams. And so that was what I learned, how to run sales digitally. 14 years ago, which is we take it for granted now because of COVID and everybody moved into Teams and Hangouts and Zoom calls. But yeah, learn mostly about sales, not so much about the corporate life, although, yeah.
I guess it has to be a very exciting time for you.
Yeah, it was exciting. Like I was 22 years old living in London, and also at the same time it was scary because I didn't have any family or friends there. And even though it might not seem like this now, I'm usually an introverted guy. Yeah, I stay mostly for myself. I don't like the big networking part. I don't like to just storm and take the room where some of my peers might do that and they pull it off and some of them don't, but I don't want to be the guy that don't pull it off. So being the youngest, being the type of character I was, it was also very difficult because it was all about performance in that type of culture. Like it was an American company. So if you do not perform, they will eat you and spit you out like you've never seen before. So one of the key learnings for me was you get there first, you're the first guy in the door, and you don't need to be the last guy out, but you do need to make sure that you do familiarize yourself and get to know the cleaning personnel, because the cleaning personnel are the ones that are always there in the evenings. And that means, hey, if you put in the work, you most likely will succeed as well. Succeed as well. But what you don't want end up happening is that you don't get in the door first, and you don't know who the cleaning personnel is, because that's the very least you can do.
You go to Documaster and become a co-founder there.
Yeah.
How does that opportunity come to you?
Yeah, so prior to joining Gartner, I worked at a company called Stepstone. It's like in Sweden, I think you have a Blocket, and Stepstone back then was Blocket, but just for job listings. And the CEO at that company were going to start Documaster, and that's why I left. And then I told him, like, hey, you most likely are not able to do the sales processes like I can. So let me join you on this and I can help you with the sales. And I ended up being one of the co-founders of Documaster, leading the sales and the go-to-market strategy for Documaster. And that opportunity came only because I had delivered 4 years prior and was one of the best sales executives in that place and knowing the CEO. So that was just pure network.
Now that was a startup, if I'm right.
Yeah.
But going from a Gartner to the startup, it has to be quite a change. So how was that?
That is a big change, because when you're coming from a huge corporate American company with like all of the benefits that comes with it, also a dress code. Every single day you had to wear a suit and a tie. If you did not wear a tie, you were sent back home and said, hey, don't you ever step foot in this door if you don't have your tie on. So it was very, very, very strict. Now, I co-founded Documaster. The year was 2014. That is I would say, the peak of SaaS startups in the early stage. Like it was peaking at the early stage. And that's where all of this cliche startup culture started happening. So it was obviously a huge change, because then I could like come in with my sneakers, with my cap on, like hoodies, bean bags. And also one of the cool things was that back then, very, very few companies were ready for or had transitioned into the cloud. So we were one of the first. I was lucky enough to be part of that movement, that getting governments and enterprises moving over to the cloud from on-premise IT solutions. So yeah, quite the change.
And now this company becomes really successful. And I guess you have equity in the company, which will help you later. But then you exit from the company. Please talk about how that happened.
Yeah.
And why you sold.
When I joined the company, I think we valued the company at 2 million euros. something like that. When I left, the company was valued at 20 million euros, and I left the company because I was never passionate about the field that we were in. We were in a very, very niche, nerdy space, which was the archival sector. So in every single governmental agency, you need to archive files and archive like citizen dialogues, and everything that you do needs to be archived of some sort. And that space was to me very, very boring. But what was exciting to me was the actual process of just taking something from 0 to 100. And when Summa Equity, a private equity firm, came in and bought the majority stake of the company, that was I would say, a good timing for me to cash out and do something different. And ever since I cashed out, that got me hooked on startups, and I really saw how exciting that space could be.
Yeah. Now the company sold, I think, again for around 1 billion Norway
Yeah,
crown.
yeah, that's true.
So, do you regret it?
No, I don't, because I knew that if I were to be in that situation again without knowing everything I know now from experience, I would still do the same. I'm a very, again, 0 to 100 guy. I love building, and when it comes to maintenance, which I felt we got to a point with me in Documaster, when it was more maintaining the pace and building like brick by brick, and not this massive explosion, just go through every single wall, and if you break something, it's fine, you just need to move. That wasn't exciting anymore, so I wanted to do more of that. But obviously, if you like, when I think about, I could have had an extra 0 on my exit, yeah, sure, that stings a little.
With that, the money. And here in Sweden, when we think about Norway, a popular TV series is Exit. Of course, you maybe have heard about it, maybe seen it.
Of course.
And Norway, when I think about Norway, and especially Oslo, I think of, oil money, super rich guys having a really good time. Did you experience, that world?
I didn't experience that in Documaster, but I did experience that in working for Gartner. That was a high roller, fast paced, and without going into too much details, like some of the key, I would say, points of Exit series, I definitely experienced at very, very close hand in London, for sure.
At a young age. So
At a young age.
that sounds dangerous. So now we get into the late 2010s, and you exit and you start a new company.
Yeah.
Marketing, Compage marketing firm. What compelled you to go into the marketing world?
Yes. Coming from Gartner, loving sales, being a Documaster journey, building from 0 to 100, I was also very much interested in the marketing side of things. And I remember in Documaster, this was in 2015, 2016, we started using HubSpot, which is now the I would say the Bible in inbound marketing. But HubSpot was a very small phenomenon, especially in the Nordics. They were huge in Silicon Valley and in the States, but it started as like this new thing here. And I wanted to get into that space because I saw the power of doing marketing activities in a digital way, but in a more personal way. And what I saw on social media 10 years ago was that businesses, enterprises, they were really like blue, super blue, very corporate, white and blue. Everything need to sound in a very specific way. They all sound the same, and there were never a familiar face. There was always actors. There was always like retushed, like Photoshop and everything. So I wanted to create an agency where we could first and foremost leverage LinkedIn, that was on the rise, and more video and bringing the CEOs around every single small business to be more in front of the camera and show more emotions and tell the real stories. And so my initial idea was to document my journey of building this agency. And so when LinkedIn actually launched the feature of being able to post videos, because you couldn't post videos on LinkedIn until 2017. And when they launched that, I launched the agency and we started this video series, which became a famous series here in Oslo. And didn't look back.
So you have been a co-founder, you have been working in a big organization, but you've never really been in the driving seat. How was that?
That was terrifying. And when I exited the DocuMaster, I got a nice sum of money, just put every single I had into the business. And I told myself, like, worst case scenario, I will be able to hire a few people and we can have a good time for a year and then we're bankrupt. But at least I will have the liquidity to have people on the payroll for at least a year. So if we don't make any money, if we don't get any clients, at least I can provide a job to people for minimum a year. And being in the driver's seat was scary in that sense, but it was never scary in the sense that I'm putting myself out there. I was never scared of being ridiculed like that. But no. So it was, I don't know, it felt natural. It felt like I've been in this space before. And one of the key things I leveraged was that, hey, I'm still way below 30. So I'm still a young guy. Who's gonna ever like kick a young guy? I am David. I am fighting against Goliath. So I knew that at the very least, if I make a fool out of myself, everybody would say, well, he's young. He'll learn. He'll grow up. So I understood that I could use that to my advantage and present myself as this underdog. And by doing that, the process of doing that, like being in the driver's seat, as you call it, wasn't so scary in that sense.
You talked about how the old firms have done their way, the same way all the time, the same models, I guess, the same, this is how we do things for hundreds of years. And then you came around and you think, okay, we're going to have this LinkedIn show. And I guess, and we're going to view our partnerships and our clients in a different way and how we do marketing. Do you still believe or think that there's space for that kind of marketing firm?
Yeah. So what we did back then was I said, I don't care about the usual KPIs of number of views, number of likes, number of visitors on your website, number of leads. Like, oh my God, there were so many agencies back then and so many marketeers were like, hey, we need leads. And no one defined really what a lead was. Some defined it as, hey, if you get a visitor on your website, that's a lead. So let's optimize for getting a lot of visitors. But the quality of the traffic is trash. Another one was, if I get someone to download my ebook, that's a lead. But it wasn't like just because you downloaded our ebook with 30 pages of yada yada, you're going to be a client. So I started thinking, hey, what really drives the decisions in small to medium-sized businesses? And it was based on my hypothesis. It was on the connection between the founder and the faces of the companies and their potential customers. So I made a bet that even if you're not a big tech company or a fast-growing tech company, it is still a founder-led sales process. And so I started thinking about, okay, so what do we want to measure? And I started saying to my customers and saying to everybody, like, the thing you want to measure is how many people are talking about you during lunch, during dinner, when they're talking to their wives or their husbands. How many times does the kid in the back seat or your youngster in the back seat talk about brand X when you're driving for football practice? Like we wanted our customers, our clients, to start measure the things that is very, very difficult to measure based on numbers. It's a feeling. And the way we did that was by creating content that was long form, was not like it is now, where you have like 6-second videos and it needs to be explosion every other second. It was long form, using real people, and we wanted people to say what people wanted to hear, wanted to write what other people wanted to read. And that worked. The difficult part today, why I don't think, or it is possible today, but it will cost you a lot more because the competition is just fierce. So I think that way is very, very difficult, but I think we are soon to be seeing a anti-movement to AI, at least from the content side. And when that happens, when that plays out in a full motion, I think you will see that people will start to find other solutions, other ways of consuming content that we can know for sure it's real. And if you look at all of the trends now, if you look at TikTok, the big trend is videos where you can see it's a real person talking. And it's more like less of how I'm mimicking and talking right now. It's almost too much. Like we want the content creator to be small. We don't want big content creator, because then trust is already gone, because you have sold your soul to the devil, my friend. So I don't believe you. We want to see small creators with fascinating thoughts, compelling speech about whatever. And if I can, I would rather have that video and that speech be made under the pillow in the bed with bad lighting. And yeah.
So, I think that's really true. I get this, when I see AI content, it feels like a fever dream often. And the really big influencers, sometimes it feels like, they've been to the island.
Mm.
So it's a really strange world we're living in.
Yeah, it's very, very strange. But I think my main point here is
Fast
that
moving.
Yeah, my main point here is that there's so much transitioning we can do within such a short period of time. And I think now that we see there's an imbalance in the transaction at the moment, where I can just push a button and I'm asking you to give me 10, 20, 30, 60 seconds of your time. And the reason why that's in imbalance is because you know that in that transaction where you get 40 seconds of my time, it's not worth it, because I didn't do anything for it. I just pressed a button. Like I can just create an avatar of myself, or I can just go on to ChatGPT and say, hey, write me an article about X and make it sound like Y and make the punchline be Z. And when people just figure that out, it's going to be a huge anti-movement, and it's going to be a lot harder to be a content creator. That's for sure.
But then your company, your firm, when goes bankrupt. Can you talk about how that happens?
I claim not to be the world's greatest general manager whatsoever. Like I was young, inexperienced. I was not fierce. I wanted to hire people. That was one of my biggest mistakes. I hired people that I thought could be someone like me, who came from like almost a traumatized childhood, and like birds with broken wings, or whatever you say it in English, like potential. And that was an honorable thought. Plus, I was not the greatest at recruitment, so I hired the right people for the wrong job. So what ended up happening was I hired too many people that did not invoice enough, and I took the blame. And instead of just scaling back, I just kept most of them there. Even when COVID hit, I was one of the few agencies, probably in the world, who did not furlough any people. So we were still on 100% capacity available, with only 18% of our time invoiced. So that was a bad thing for 2 years. That drained our bank. Then Ukraine war came. We had many clients who had a community in Kiev. They had to drop out of our agreement, and then the energy crisis came as well. And then I just said, okay, guys, enough is enough. I need to pull the plug. It was one hell of a ride, but the story ends here.
So, the last question about your bankruptcy. What lessons did you draw from the process of going bankrupt?
Always hire people that have done the job before. And yeah, that's like my main message. When yeah, it's too painful. Too painful.
So we get into 2023, and you go from being an entrepreneur to become an investor, and you have done it at let's see, you're doing that at Aka now, Aka, and you're to go market. And I think one more. So what drew you to become an investor?
I joined a company called Anker. I co-founded that as well. I got the company out there in 7 countries. I fundraised a couple of $1 million, and then I stepped back and on the sidelines as an investor. And now moving into Akka was the easiest decision of my life, because I've been in this space for 15 years. I love startups. I love investing. And when I finally got the opportunity, in which I felt to move on to the other side of the table, finding startups instead of building them, I just had to say yes. And being in Akka is one of the, in my opinion, one of the greatest fintech companies out there in Europe, democratizing investments for everybody.
So we have a big news that's coming up soon. But before that, I have to ask you, if you want to become an investor, what makes someone a great investor?
In the startup, well, number one thing is you need to have a diversified portfolio, because in the startup world you will have losers. It's not like every single startup will give you a return. So number one thing is you need a diversified portfolio, and you need to be consistent, and you need to invest in stuff that excites you in some way. If you look at all of the great investors of our time, they all invest in stuff that excites them. Not necessarily in the fields where they're experts in, but in the fields where they get excited. So that's a key thing. And be anxious about jumping on trends all the time. Like, diversified portfolio, think long term, and then obviously in the startup world, if you look at all the greats, they all, in the early stage companies, they all are meticulously interested in the founders equally as they are in the idea. Like, take for instance, I'll share a quick one here. Take for instance Airbnb founders. They got into Y Combinator, the amazing incubator in Silicon Valley. They got into that incubator and got the initial investment only because these founders, they sold cereal to keep the lights on, and it was because of that grit where they could, even though the company was quote unquote failing, like they didn't get any traction for multiple years, but the fact that they were able to pivot and make sure that they could keep the lights on by selling cereal boxes, that told the investors, like, hey, these guys, if there ever was someone who was gonna make it and pull off this crazy idea, it's probably going to be them.
So with that, in order to become a good investor in a startup, I guess, you have to have, so as you say, a keen interest in the founder. But when you became an investor, do you have any role models?
I had the usual, like, Warren Buffett, and obviously Paul Graham from Y Combinator. So I had a few like that. But what I was mostly interested in was the founders themselves, like reading about the stories of the likes of Airbnb, Uber, Facebook, like understanding those types of people. That is what really excites me. Like, who are these people who are able to pull off the most insane ideas at the time? Like, obviously they're all they will all be remembered as geniuses 10 years later, but at the time they're looked at like crazy. Take, for instance, Airbnb. They pushed an idea where you invite strangers into your home and let them sleep in your bed. Like, that sounded crazy 15 years ago, right? But now not so much. And those are the types of stories I find interesting to read about and ponder about. Like, who are these founders?
And now back to Aka. So at this company, at your firm, you have some really notable people like you. And of course, you know some, as many Swedes know him, from the same region as me, a bit north. And if you want to join you guys, you have big news.
Yeah. So first, Akka is an investment platform for investors who have a investment range from 300 euros and all the way up to high net worth individuals. We curate one startup deal every single 3 weeks, and at the we have been finding the most promising companies in Europe by receiving their pitches and by knocking on doors and getting ourselves in the right rooms to curate deals. Now, the most exciting news we have right now is that now we also have a collaboration with YC, meaning YC has been consistently the best in terms of return on investment, best incubator in the world. And 4 times a year they have a batch. So summer, winter, spring, autumn, whatever. They have a batch of X amount of companies that are invited, and they only accept less than 1% of companies applying. And now moving forward, the community of Akka are now able to directly invest into those companies, which is not available anywhere else. But we have made that collaboration and super excited about that.
So this is a great opportunity for people to join the future successful companies, the future Googles, the future Apples. So that's really great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let me also be clear. I'm not saying that you will see 4,000x on your investments. Investing in startups always comes with a risk.
Yes,
But
of course.
if you look at all of these successful companies, many of them started in YC, that's for sure. But every single time there's a successful company, there's always a little group of early investors that made it big. And that's why we think startup investing is to be democratized for everybody, and that it is an asset class that is on the rise and something to be interested in.
Yeah. So in closing, of course, investment is a risk, especially in startups. It's a highly volatile market, if you say so. So, but you can get a unicorn and someone earn a bit of money. But if it fails, as we have discussed today about when things goes as you not have planned, and I think everyone can relate to it. I think you can earn some lessons from it.
Yeah, that's
two-way street.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. That's why we say, like, if you invest in the early stages when you don't have much traction, it's mostly about the founders. Are they able to solve problems to get from point A to point B really, really fast, pivot, exciting stuff, yeah.
So, Adrian, and now we have gone 10 minutes past our supposed time.
Sorry about that.
No, it's my problem. But I think it's not the problem. I had really fun doing this this episode of the podcast. It's a bit different. But thank you very much for joining me.
Of course. I'm happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much.